Welcome, gentle traveler, to a place where the world softens at its edges, where the rush of the day melts away.
Welcome, gentle traveler, to a place where dreams are woven from starlight and whispers. Tonight, let the world outside fade softly away, like mist dissolving in the morning sun. Feel your body settle into the comfort that the speaking bird arounds you, your head resting gently, your shoulders releasing their weight, your breathing finding its own peaceful rhythm, slow and steady as waves upon a distant shore. Tonight's story comes from lands far beyond the horizon, from palaces built of marble and moonlight, from gardens where fountains sing and trees remember ancient songs. It is a tale of three treasures more precious than all the jewels in the world: a bird whose voice holds the truth of all things, a tree whose melodies can heal the deepest sorrows, and water that gleams like captured sunshine, each drop holding a wish. But it is also a story of love, the love of a father and mother, the love between sisters and brothers, and the love that remains true even when hidden beneath years of silence and distance. Let yourself drift now, dear listener, into this world of wonders. Let each word carry you deeper into rest, deeper into peace, deeper into the soft embrace of sleep that waits patiently for you like an old and gentle friend. Long, long ago, in a kingdom where the mountains touched the sky with their snow-crowned peaks, there lived a sultan whose heart was as generous as the summer sun. His palace stood gleaming white against the blue heavens, its gardens filled with roses that bloomed in every color you could imagine: crimson red, sunset orange, butter yellow, and the softest pink like the inside of a seashell. The Sultan was a good man, beloved by his people, but his heart carried a quiet sadness. Though he had everything a ruler could desire: silks and spices, horses swift as wind, advisors wise as owls, he had no children to fill his palace with laughter, no sons or daughters to inherit his kindness and his throne. Each evening, the Sultan would walk through his gardens as the day softened into twilight, listening to the nightingales sing their silver songs, watching the first stars appear like distant candles being lit one by one across the velvet sky. And each evening, he would wish upon those stars for the blessing of a child. Now, on the edge of this great kingdom, far from the marble palace and the bustling markets of the capital city, there stood a small house, simple and clean, where three sisters lived together. They had no mother or father, no fortune or fine clothes, but they had each other, and they had their dreams. The eldest sister was proud and ambitious, with eyes that sparkled when she imagined wearing silk and jewels. The middle sister was clever and restless, always thinking of ways to rise above her station. But the youngest sister, the youngest was different. Her name was Perizada, though she was often called simply the Gentle One, for her heart was as pure as mountain spring water, and her nature as sweet as honeysuckle on a summer breeze. One warm evening, as the three sisters sat together in their courtyard under the rising moon, they spoke of wishes and dreams, the way young people do when the world still feels full of infinite possibility. "If I could marry the Sultan's chief baker," said the eldest sister, her voice bright with longing, "I would make him such feasts that the entire kingdom would speak of nothing else. Every celebration would be graced by my pastries: towers of honeyed almonds, mountains of rose-flavored cream, oceans of golden syrup." The middle sister laughed and tossed her hair. "Sister, your dreams are too small. If I could marry the Sultan's chief weaver, I would create such tapestries and carpets that visiting kings would weep with envy. I would weave entire stories into silk, battles and romances, gardens and palaces, all flowing from my fingers like water." Then both sisters turned to the youngest, to gentle Perizada, who sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap like a prayer. "And you?" they asked. "What would you wish for, little dreamer?" Perizada looked up at the moon, that silver guardian of nighttime wishes, and spoke softly but clearly, her words falling like dewdrops into still water. "If I could marry the Sultan himself," she said, "I would give him 3 children, 2 sons with courage like lions and wisdom like sages, and one daughter with a heart as clear as crystal and a spirit as free as the wind. They would bring him such joy that his sadness would vanish like shadows before the dawn. Now, dear listener, let your breathing slow and deepen as I tell you this. The universe has a way of listening to wishes spoken under moonlight. And on that very evening, the Sultan himself happened to be riding through the streets of his kingdom in disguise, as rulers sometimes do when they wish to hear the true voices of their people, unfiltered by ceremony and fear. He was passing by the sisters' house at the very moment when their wishes floated through the window on the evening breeze. He heard every word: the eldest sister's dreams of feasts, the middle sister's visions of tapestries, and the youngest sister's promise of 3 children who would fill a lonely palace with love. The Sultan's heart, which had been carrying its quiet burden of sadness for so many years, suddenly felt lighter, as though a door had opened in a room that had been sealed too long. Here, in this simple house, was a young woman who understood what he needed most: not wealth or glory, but the laughter of children, the warmth of family, the continuation of love beyond his own lifetime. The very next morning, as the sun painted the sky in shades of apricot and gold, there came a knocking at the sisters' door. When they opened it, they found not one visitor but many royal guards in brilliant uniforms, advisors carrying scrolls, and servants bearing chests of gifts that gleamed and sparkled in the early light. The Sultan had come to make the sisters' wishes come true. The eldest sister was to marry the chief baker, and she would have all the honeyed almonds and rose cream her heart could desire. The middle sister was to marry the chief weaver, and she would create tapestries that would indeed make visiting kings weep. And the youngest sister, gentle Parizada with her pure heart and simple wish, was to become the Sultan's bride, the new Sultana of the realm. The wedding was celebrated for 40 days and 40 nights, with music that floated like ribbons through the air, with dancers who spun like colorful tops, with fountains flowing with sherbet and rose water, and with enough joy to fill the entire kingdom from the mountains to the sea. And when the celebrations ended, and the young Sultana settled into her new life in the palace of marble and moonlight, she found that the Sultan was everything she had hoped for: kind and gentle, wise and patient, a man whose generosity extended to the smallest sparrow and the humblest farmer in his realm. Time passed in the palace the way it does when happiness fills the days, each sunrise bringing new contentment, each sunset carrying gratitude for blessings received. The gardens bloomed and faded and bloomed again. The seasons turned their slow wheel, and then, as promised in her moonlight wish, the Sultana discovered she was to have a child. The Sultan's joy knew no bounds. He walked through his palace singing, actually singing, much to the delight of the servants who had never heard their master so carefree. He ordered new gardens to be planted, new fountains to be built, new rooms to be prepared and decorated with such care and love that every surface seemed to glow with welcome. But while joy filled the palace like sunshine, something darker stirred in the hearts of the Sultana's 2 sisters. You see, dear listener, envy is like a small seed that can grow into a twisted tree if watered with bitterness and resentment. And the 2 older sisters, though they had received exactly what they wished for, comfortable positions, fine husbands, respected roles in the palace, could not bear to see their youngest sister elevated so far above them. Where they had to bow, she sat on a throne. Where they had to wait for permission, she had only to speak a wish. Where they remained what they had always been, she had become something entirely new, the most important woman in the kingdom, beloved by the Sultan, honored by all. And so, in the shadows of their hearts, a plan began to form, a terrible plan born of jealousy and spite, a plan that would bring great sorrow before it could be undone. When the time came for the Sultana to give birth, the Sultan had to leave the palace on urgent matters of state. A neighboring kingdom required his wisdom to settle a dispute that threatened to become war. Though his heart pulled him back toward his palace, toward his beloved wife, who was about to give him the children he had dreamed of, his duty to his people pulled him forward. "I shall return before the child draws its first breath," he promised the Sultana, kissing her forehead with such tenderness that everyone who witnessed it felt their own hearts grow warm. Wait for me, my love, and know that every moment away from you is an eternity. But sometimes, dear listener, the world has its own timing, and babies arrive when they choose, not when we plan. Scarcely had the Sultan's horse disappeared beyond the horizon when the Sultana's time came upon her suddenly, like a storm rising without warning. The two sisters, who had cunningly maneuvered themselves into positions as the Sultana's attendants during her confinement, sent all the other servants away on false errands. And there, in the privacy of the birthing chamber, something miraculous happened. The Sultana gave birth not to one child, but to three perfect babies, just as she had promised in her moonlight wish. 2 sons, strong and beautiful, with eyes like dark stars and voices like silver bells. And between them, a daughter so lovely that she seemed to carry moonlight in her very skin, with the promise of courage and kindness written in every feature. But the sisters' hearts, poisoned by envy, saw not miracles but opportunities for cruelty. While the Sultana lay exhausted from her labors, drifting in that hazy place between waking and sleeping, the 2 sisters stole the 3 babies from their cradles. They placed the infants in a basket woven of rushes and willow, whispered a prayer that was half blessing and half curse, and set the basket to float upon the canal that ran through the palace gardens, the same canal that flowed eventually to the great river beyond the kingdom's walls. Then, these sisters, these women who should have protected the innocent, returned to their mistress with 3 small puppies wrapped in silk. When the Sultana woke, still foggy with pain and exhaustion, they told her a lie so terrible that it seemed impossible anyone could speak it. "We are so sorry," they said, their voices dripping with false sympathy. "But your children, they were born as dogs, not humans. It must be some curse, some evil magic. The Sultan must be told." Now, far down the canal, where the palace walls gave way to wilderness and water met the wider world, there lived a kind man, the Sultan's chief gardener, whose name was Kerim. He had spent his life coaxing beauty from earth and seed, teaching roses to climb and fountains to sing. He was growing old now, and he and his wife had long ago accepted that they would never have children of their own. On this particular morning, Kerim was walking along the canal's edge, checking the water levels and clearing debris, when he saw something unusual floating toward him. A basket, well-woven and strong, moving purposefully through the current as though guided by invisible hands. When he pulled the basket from the water and looked inside, his weathered face transformed with wonder. 3 babies lay there, sleeping peacefully despite their journey, protected by some grace he could not name. 2 boys and a girl, perfect in every way, their tiny hands curled like flower petals, their breathing soft and steady as a butterfly's wings. Kerim lifted the basket with trembling hands and carried it home to his wife, feeling as though he carried the world's most precious cargo, which indeed he did. His wife wept when she saw the babies, wept with joy and wonder and gratitude for this unexpected blessing. They knew these were no ordinary children abandoned by desperate parents. The quality of the basket, the silk, wrappings, the luminous quality of the babies themselves, all spoke of something extraordinary, something touched by destiny. "We will raise them as our own," Kerim said, his voice firm with decision and soft with love. "We will give them everything we have, our care, our wisdom, our devotion. And perhaps one day we will understand why the water brought them to us." And so, dear listener, while sorrow descended upon the palace like a thundercloud, while the Sultan returned to hear the terrible lie about his wife giving birth to puppies, while the gentle Sultana was led away in disgrace to a small prison at the palace gate, though the Sultan could not bring himself to punish her more harshly, for his love was deep and true despite his confusion and pain. 3 children grew up in a gardener's cottage, knowing nothing of their royal blood, but learning everything about love and kindness and the patient tending of growing things. The boys were named Bahman and Perviz, strong names for strong sons. The girl was named Parizade, a name that means born of the fairies, for even as a tiny baby, There was something ethereal about her, something that suggested she belonged as much to the realm of magic as to the ordinary world. The children grew like well-watered plants in good soil, each day bringing new growth, new understanding, new capabilities. Karim and his wife gave them everything, not material wealth, for a gardener's wages are modest, but education and ethics, stories and songs, lessons in seeing the beauty hidden in everyday things. Bahman grew strong and brave, with a sense of justice as sharp as a sword and a gentleness with small creatures that would have made his father proud, had the Sultan known of his son's existence. Pervez grew clever and thoughtful, with a mind that saw patterns in everything and a gift for understanding the languages of wind and water, stone and star. But Parizadeh was special even among these special children. She grew wise beyond her years, with an intuition that seemed to reach beyond the visible world into realms of deeper knowing. Birds would land on her shoulders and whisper secrets. Flowers would bloom more brightly when she passed. And she had dreams. Dreams of a palace she had never seen, of parents she had never known, of a destiny that called to her like a voice across distant water. The years turned their wheel, seasons spinning from blossom to harvest, from snow to green growing things and back again. The children became youths, and the youths grew into young adults, beautiful and capable, wise and kind. And then, on a day when Parizadeh was 18 years old, walking in the market of the great city with her brothers, an old woman approached her, a woman whose face seemed young and ancient all at once, whose eyes held depths like wells leading to the center of the earth. "Beautiful maiden," the old woman said, her voice like wind through dry leaves. "You have everything a young woman could want: loving parents, devoted brothers, health and beauty and wisdom. But there are 3 treasures you lack, 3 wonders that would complete the picture of your life as the final tiles complete a mosaic." Parizadeh felt something stir in her heart, a recognition, a knowing, as though she had been waiting all her life to hear these words. "What treasures?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old woman smiled, and for a moment she seemed to flicker like a candle flame, there and not there, real and unreal. "The speaking bird, who knows all truths and can answer any question. The singing tree, whose melodies can heal sorrow and restore what has been broken. And the golden water, which flows upward toward the sun and brings blessings wherever it touches." "Where can these treasures be found?" asked Bahman, stepping closer to protect his sister, though from what danger he could not say. 20 days' journey from here," the old woman replied. "Beyond the mountains, beyond the desert, beyond the forest where day and night meet and marry. At the summit of the highest peak, you will find them, if you are brave enough to face the tests, if you are wise enough to resist the warnings, if you are destined to succeed where all others have failed." And then, before they could ask more questions, the old woman was gone, simply gone, vanished like morning mist when sunlight touches it, leaving behind only the scent of roses and rain. That night, in the cottage they had always called home, the 3 siblings spoke long into the darkness about the old woman's words. Karim and his wife had grown very old now, their hair white as new-fallen snow, their hands twisted like ancient tree roots. They had been good parents, the best parents imaginable, but the children could feel the pull of destiny like a tide, inexorable and strong. "I will go," Bahman declared. "I am the eldest. It is my right and my responsibility to seek these treasures." Parizadeh felt fear clutch at her heart, but she also felt the rightness of it. Some journeys must be undertaken alone. Some treasures can only be won by those brave enough to risk everything. So it was decided. Bahman would go, following the old woman's directions, seeking the speaking bird, the singing tree, and the golden water. And to keep himself connected to those he loved, Parizadeh gave him a knife, a small blade with a handle of carved bone. "Watch this knife," she told him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Keep it where you can see it every day. If the blade stays bright and clean, you will know I am safe. But if rust appears upon it, if the blade grows dull and spotted, you will know I am in danger or distress, and you must come to find me." Bachman accepted the knife, touched by his sister's wisdom and her love. Then he embraced his family, his aging parents, his clever brother, his wise sister, and set out on the road that led beyond the edges of the known world, into the realm of tests and treasures, challenges and changes. He rode for 20 days, just as the old woman had said, through landscapes that shifted and changed like the moods of the sky. He crossed mountains where eagles nested in clouds, traversed deserts where the sand sang in the wind, pushed through forests so thick that sunlight became a rare and precious thing, filtering down in golden shafts like treasure from above. On the 20th day, he came to the foot of the highest peak, a mountain that seemed to rise forever, its summit lost in mist and mystery. At the base of the mountain, he found an old man sitting beside a spring, his beard so long it pooled around him like water, his staff so gnarled it seemed part of the earth itself. "Turn back, young traveler," the old man said, his voice heavy with warning. "Many have climbed this mountain seeking the treasures at its summit. None have returned. The path is cursed with voices, voices that will call to you, taunt you, mock you, beg you. They will say your name. They will speak of your failures and fears. And if you turn around, if you look back even once, you will be transformed into a black stone like all the others who have tried and failed." Bachman felt his courage waver like a candle flame in wind, but only for a moment. He thought of his sister's wise eyes, his brother's steady strength, his parents' patient love. He thought of the treasures that waited above, the speaking bird who knew all truths, the singing tree that could heal all sorrows, the golden water that brought blessings. "I will not turn back," he said firmly. "I will not look around. I will climb this mountain and return with the treasures, or I will not return at all." The old man sighed, a sound like wind through empty caves, and gestured toward the path that wound up the mountainside, narrow and steep, disappearing into the clouds above. Bachman began to climb. At first, the path was silent except for the sound of his own breathing, his own footsteps on stone. But as he climbed higher, the voices began. Softly at first, like whispers on the edge of hearing. Then louder, more insistent, coming from all directions and from nowhere, from the air itself and from the stones beneath his feet. "Bachman! Bachman, why do you climb? Why do you struggle? You will fail as all the others have failed. Your sister will weep when you don't return. Your parents will die of grief, waiting for a son who becomes stone. Turn around, Bachman. Just one look, just one glance to see how high you've climbed. Surely one look cannot hurt." The voices were terrible. Terrible because they sounded like people he knew, like his sister's voice and his brother's voice, like his mother crying and his father calling his name in anguish. They spoke his deepest fears, his hidden doubts, his secret shames. And Bachman, brave as he was, could not resist forever. Just before he reached the summit, just as the treasures came into view beyond the last veil of mist, a voice came that sounded exactly like Parizadeh, his beloved sister, crying out in pain. "Bachman, help me! I'm hurt! I need you! Please turn around!" And he did. He turned. Just for a moment, just for a heartbeat, just long enough to look back down the mountain path to see if his sister was truly there, truly in danger. The transformation was instantaneous. His body went rigid, his skin turned cold and hard, his feet rooted to the stone path. And Bachman, eldest son of the Sultan who never knew he had a son, became just another black stone among the thousands of black stones that littered the mountainside, all that remained of the heroes and seekers who had tried before him and failed the same test. Back in the gardener's cottage, Parizade looked at the knife her brother had left behind, the knife that was to keep them connected across distance and danger. And she saw the rust bloom upon it like a terrible flower, spreading across the bright blade until no gleam of steel remained. "Bachman is lost," she whispered, and her tears fell like rain upon the rusted metal. "My brother is lost, and I am the only one who can find him. Perviz, seeing his sister's tears and understanding the message of the knife, stood up with determination hardening his gentle face. "No, sister. You stay here with our parents in their old age. I will go. I will find Bachman and bring him home, and I will claim the treasures that we were meant to have." And so, dear listener, the pattern repeated itself, as patterns do in stories and in life. Perviz took a string of pearls that Parizade gave. "Watch these pearls," she told him. "If they continue to move freely along their string, you will know I am well. But if they become fixed and frozen, unable to slide, you will know I am in trouble." And he set out on the same road his brother had traveled, through mountains and deserts and forests deep, seeking the same destination, the same treasures, the same destiny. Let your breathing deepen now, gentle listener, as I tell you that Perviz too traveled for 20 days, found the same old man at the mountain's base, heard the same warnings about the voices that would call and tempt and trap. And Perviz, clever as he was, thought he could resist where his brother had failed. "I will stop my ears with wax," he told the old man. "I will hear nothing. The voices cannot tempt me if I cannot hear them." But the old man shook his head sadly. "The voices do not come through your ears, young traveler. They come through your heart, through your fears, through your love for those you have left behind. You cannot stop your heart from hearing." Still, Perviz climbed, and the voices came, and despite his clever plans and strong will, he too turned around, turned to see if his brother was calling him, turned to see if his sister needed him, turned just once, just for a heartbeat, and became stone. Back in the cottage, Parizade watched the pearls stop moving on their string, watched them freeze in place like time itself had stopped, and knew that both her brothers were lost. The weight of grief upon her young shoulders would have crushed someone less strong. But Parizade was her mother's daughter, though she didn't know it, the daughter of a sultana who had promised 3 extraordinary children, and had delivered on that promise even from the depths of imprisonment and disgrace. "I will go," she told her aging parents, Karim and his wife, who wept to think of losing their 3rd child, their precious daughter, their fairy-born Parizade. "I will bring my brothers home, and I will bring the treasures that we were meant to have. This is my destiny. I have always known it, even when I didn't know what I knew." She dressed carefully for the journey, not in fine silks, but in practical traveling clothes. She armed herself not with weapons, but with wisdom and determination and love stronger than fear. And she set out on the same road her brothers had traveled, following the same path to the same mountain, to face the same test that had defeated them both. But Parizade did something different. When she reached the old man at the mountain's base and heard his warnings about the voices and the stones, she listened, truly listened, with the ears of her heart as well as her head. "The voices will speak of everything you love and fear," the old man told her. "They will sound like truth, they will feel like truth, but they are lies, daughter of destiny. They are illusions meant to trap you. The only truth is the path forward, upward, toward the summit where the treasures wait." "Tell me," Parizade asked, "what happens to those who become stones? Are they truly lost forever?" The old man's ancient eyes flickered with something that might have been hope. "The speaking bird knows all truths," he said carefully. "It knows every answer to every question, including questions about reversing transformations and undoing what has been done. Bring the speaking bird down from the mountain, and perhaps what has been turned to stone can be turned back to flesh." With this knowledge warming her heart like a carried candle, Parizade began her climb. The voices came, just as promised, just as expected. They called her name, Parizade, Parizade, in 1,000 different tones and textures. They sounded like her brothers begging for help, like her parents crying for their daughter, like her own voice telling herself to give up, to turn around, to stop this foolish quest. They whispered her deepest fears. "You are not brave enough. You are not strong enough. You are just a girl, just a gardener's daughter, nobody special, nobody chosen for greatness." They shouted her hidden shames. "You failed your brothers. You let them go. Their stones are your fault. They sang her secret doubts. The treasures are not real. The speaking bird is a myth. The singing tree is a story. The golden water is a lie. But Parizade had something her brothers did not have. Not more courage, not more cleverness, but a different kind of wisdom. She had the wisdom to know that thoughts and feelings, no matter how real they seem, are not the same as truth. She had the wisdom to let the voices wash over her like water over stone, acknowledging them without believing them, hearing them without heeding them. She climbed steadily upward, her eyes fixed on the path ahead, her mind focused on her purpose, her heart anchored to her intention. When the voices screamed, she breathed slowly. When they whispered seductively, she stepped carefully. When they sounded exactly like her brothers calling for rescue, she reminded herself, the only way to save them is to keep climbing. The only way to help them is to reach the summit. The only rescue is forward, not back. And so, step by step, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, Parizade climbed higher than anyone had climbed before. She passed the spot where Perviz had turned to stone, though she didn't know it. She passed the place where Bahman had failed, though she couldn't see him. She climbed through the cloud of voices, through the storm of temptation, through the hurricane of doubt. And then, suddenly, the voices stopped. The silence was so profound it was almost louder than the noise had been. Parizade took one more step, then another, and found herself standing on the summit of the mountain, where the air was thin and clear and the view stretched forever in all directions. And there, exactly as the old woman had promised, were the three treasures. The speaking bird sat on a branch of the singing tree, its feathers every color that has ever existed, and several colors that have no names. It turned its bright eyes toward Parizade and spoke in a voice like bells and honey, wisdom and wind. "Welcome, daughter of destiny," it said. "We have been waiting for you for a very long time." Below the tree, a fountain rose upward, the golden water, flowing impossibly toward the sky instead of down toward earth, each drop catching sunlight and throwing it back transformed into rainbows and promises. The singing tree itself was beyond description, its leaves making melodies that healed every hurt Parizade had ever felt, its branches swaying in rhythms that felt like coming home, like being held, like being known completely and loved anyway. Tears streamed down Parizade's face, not tears of sadness, but tears of recognition, of completion, of finding something she hadn't known she'd been missing all her life. "I have come for you," she told the treasures, her voice steady despite her tears. "I have come to bring you home, wherever home is, and I have come to ask a question." "Ask," said the speaking bird, preening its impossible feathers with its golden beak. "I know all truths. I hold all answers. Ask me what you will." "My brothers," Parizade said. "They tried to reach you and were turned to stone. Can they be restored? Can what has been transformed be changed back?" The speaking bird ruffled its feathers, and the sound was like laughter, kind laughter, loving laughter, the laughter of someone who knows how the story ends and knows it ends well. "Take the golden water," the bird instructed. "Collect it in a vessel, and as you descend the mountain, sprinkle it upon every black stone you pass. What has been turned to stone by fear and doubt can be turned back to flesh by courage and love. But remember, do not use all the water. Save at least 3 drops for your garden at home, for they will bring blessings beyond anything you can imagine." With trembling hands and a singing heart, Parizade found a golden flask that hung from one of the singing tree's branches, placed there, it seemed, just for this purpose, just for this moment. She filled it with the golden water, watching in wonder as the water flowed upward into the flask as easily as ordinary water flows down. She asked the speaking bird to come with her, and it flew to her shoulder as though it had been her companion forever. She took a branch from the singing tree, just a small branch, but it came away easily, and she knew that when she planted it, it would grow into a full tree, bringing its healing melodies to wherever she called home. And then, carrying the treasures that were also somehow her destiny, her birthright, her inheritance. Parizad began her descent. As she passed each black stone, she sprinkled the golden water upon it, just a few drops, just enough. And each stone shivered and shook, colors flooding back into gray, warmth returning to cold, flesh remembering how to be flesh instead of mineral. Young men and old heroes, brave women and bold seekers, all those who had tried and failed over the years, they all woke as though from a long sleep, blinking in confusion, then in wonder, then in gratitude. And there, near the top of the path, she found her brothers, first Perviz, then Bahman, and restored them with the golden drops, with tears and laughter, with embraces that felt like prayers of thanksgiving. "You did it," Bahman whispered, his voice rough with emotion and the strangeness of having been stone. "You succeeded where we failed." "We will discuss how and why later," Parizad said, smiling through her tears. "For now, let us simply go home. Our parents wait, and they have worried long enough." The three siblings descended together, the speaking bird riding on Parizad's shoulder, the branch of the singing tree carried carefully in Bahman's arms, the flask of golden water secured at Perviz's belt. Behind them came all the others who had been restored, scattering to return to homes and kingdoms across the world, carrying tales of the brave maiden who had broken the mountain's curse. And here, dear listener, is where I must pause in our tale. For you see, the journey home takes time, and there is much more to tell, of what happened when the siblings returned to their cottage, of what the speaking bird revealed, of what the 3 drops of golden water would grow in the gardener's courtyard, and of how 3 children would be reunited with a father they had never known, and a mother they had never met. But for now, let your breathing slow and deepen. Let your body settle more completely into rest. The story will continue, just as your dreams will continue when sleep finally takes you into its gentle embrace. Feel the weight of your body against the comfort that holds you. Feel each breath flow in and out, carrying away tension, bringing in peace. The speaking bird would tell you, if it were here, that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, becoming exactly who you are meant to be. Rest now, gentle traveler. Rest and dream of mountains climbed and treasures found, of courage that keeps moving forward, of love that transforms stone back to flesh. The story waits for you, just as sleep waits for you, patient and kind. Welcome back, dear traveler, to the gentle current of our story. When we left our tale, 3 siblings were descending a mountain with treasures beyond price. The speaking bird whose voice holds truth, the singing tree whose melodies heal all hurts, and the golden water that flows upward and brings blessings wherever it touches. They were going home, these children of destiny, to the cottage where a gardener and his wife waited with hope worn thin by worry, but not yet broken. Let yourself settle once more into stillness as I tell you what happened next. Let your breathing find its natural rhythm, slow, steady, effortless. Let the world beyond this story fade like watercolors in rain, leaving only this moment, this voice, this gentle journey towards sleep and resolution. The journey down the mountain and back through the strange lands they had crossed took time. Not as long as the journey there, for return journeys never quite take as long as outward ones, but still, days passed. Days of walking through forests where light fell in golden columns, through deserts where stars at night were so bright they cast shadows, through mountains where eagles called greetings from their distant nests. And as they traveled, speaking bird would occasionally speak, sharing wisdom in that voice like bells and honey, like wind through leaves, like water over smooth stones. "You wonder who you truly are," the bird said one evening as they camped beside a stream, watching fireflies write their brief, bright letters on the darkening air. "You feel it, don't you? The sense of being more than you seem, of belonging somewhere you have never been, of missing people you have never met." Parizad looked at the bird, her eyes wide in the firelight. Bahman and Perviz leaned closer, feeling the same recognition that their sister felt. "Who are we?" Parizad asked softly. Karam and his wife have been the best parents we could imagine, but sometimes I dream of a palace I have never seen, of a woman who sings lullabies I have never heard, of a sadness that is not my own but somehow lives inside my heart. All in time, the speaking bird replied, ruffling its impossible feathers. All truths will be revealed when the moment is right, when the ground is prepared, when hearts are ready to receive what has been too long denied. For now, continue home. Plant the singing tree in your garden. Let the golden water flow where it will. And when the time comes, I will speak the truths that need speaking. And so they continued, trusting the bird's wisdom, trusting the path that had led them this far. When they finally reached the cottage where they had grown up, the simple, clean dwelling with its courtyard and its vegetable garden, its flowers and its fruit trees, they found Karam and his wife sitting by the door, older and more frail than when the siblings had left, but alive, still alive, waiting with the patience of love that hopes against hope. The reunion was everything a reunion should be: tears and laughter, embraces that tried to make up for all the days of separation, words tumbling over each other in the rush to share and explain and reconnect.
"We thought we had lost you,"
Karam said, his weathered face wet with tears of joy. All three of our children, gone into the wide world, perhaps never to return. But here you are, all here, all safe, all home. We have brought treasures, Bahman said, and showed his father the branch of the singing tree, which had stayed fresh and green throughout their journey, its leaves still humming their healing melodies. We have brought wonders, Pervez added, showing the flask with the remaining golden water, not much left, just those 3 drops that the speaking bird had told Parizadeh to save, but 3 drops that somehow seemed more precious than all the water in all the oceans. And Parizadeh said nothing, but let the speaking bird step from her shoulder onto her outstretched hand, where it regarded the old couple with bright eyes that seemed to see past surface into soul, past present into future, past what was into what could be. Plant the branch in your courtyard, the speaking bird instructed. Dig a small fountain basin in the center of your garden. Place 1 drop of golden water in that basin. The water will multiply and flow, creating its own fountain, its own blessing. Plant the singing tree beside it, and then invite your neighbors, your friends, all the good people you have known in this city, to come and see the wonders that have come to dwell in a humble gardener's garden. Karam and his wife did exactly as the bird instructed. In the center of their modest courtyard, they dug a basin lined with smooth stones. Into this basin, Pervez carefully, so carefully, placed 1 single drop of the golden water. And oh, gentle listener, the magic that followed. The single drop swelled and multiplied, becoming a stream, becoming a fountain that flowed upward, defying all the laws that say water must fall, must seek the lowest ground. It rose toward the sky in a column of liquid gold, catching sunlight and throwing it back in every direction as rainbows and sparkles, as promise and blessing. Beside this impossible fountain, Bahman planted the branch of the singing tree. He dug the hole with his own hands, placed the branch carefully in the earth, covered its roots with soil that had been enriched by years of Karim's patient gardening. And before their eyes, the branch took root and began to grow, not slowly over months and years as ordinary trees grow, but steadily over hours, reaching upward and outward, unfurling leaves that sang in harmonies no human composer had ever imagined, melodies that made the heart remember what joy felt like even after sorrow, that made the soul remember what wholeness felt like even after fracture. The speaking bird settled into the branches of the singing tree as though claiming its throne, and its voice joined the tree's melodies in a symphony of wonder. Word spread through the city as such word always does, whispered from neighbor to neighbor, from merchant to customer, from child to parent. The gardener's house, people said. There are miracles there, a fountain that flows upward, a tree that sings, a bird that speaks truth. People began to come, at first a few curious neighbors, then more and more, drawn by reports of beauty and wonder, of music that could heal old wounds, of water that brought blessings just from looking at it. They came at dawn, and they came at dusk. They came alone, and they came in families. They came skeptical, and they came believing. And everyone who came left changed in some small way. A little lighter, a little brighter, a little more whole. Now, dear listener, let your breathing deepen as I tell you that news of these wonders reached even to the palace, to the white marble halls where the Sultan lived in his diminished joy, where in a small room at the palace gate, a woman who had once been sultana waited in her long imprisonment, her punishment for crimes she had never committed, her exile for a curse that had never been real. The Sultan heard about the fountain and the tree and the bird from his advisors, who thought perhaps these wonders might lift the melancholy that had settled over their ruler like a gray fog. Ever since that terrible day, 20 years ago now, when his beloved wife had supposedly given birth to dogs instead of children, though he had never quite believed it, never quite accepted it, even as he reluctantly allowed her to be confined. The Sultan had carried a sorrow that no amount of wise governance or successful rule could ease. Perhaps, one advisor suggested gently, Your Majesty would like to visit this gardener's house, to see these wonders that everyone speaks of. They say the singing tree's melodies can heal any sorrow, and Your Majesty has carried sorrow long enough. And so, one morning when the sky was the particular shade of blue that seems to promise good things, the Sultan rode out from his palace in a procession of modest size, not the full royal retinue, but enough attendants to be appropriate for a sultan's dignity. He rode through streets he had governed for so long, past faces he was responsible for, toward a gardener's cottage on the edge of the city where miracles had apparently taken up residence. When he arrived at the cottage, Karim came out to greet him, bowing low, his old heart beating fast with nervousness and wonder. What had he and his humble wife done to deserve such attention, such honor? But the Sultan barely noticed the old gardener. His eyes were fixed on the courtyard beyond, where the golden water fountain flowed upward in its column of light, where the singing tree swayed and harmonized with itself, where the speaking bird sat among the branches like a jewel, like a flame, like a piece of the sun brought down to earth. And his eyes were also fixed, though he didn't quite realize it at first, on three young people who stood in the garden. Two young men, strong and noble in bearing, with eyes like dark stars and faces that tugged at something deep in his memory, and a young woman whose grace and wisdom seemed to shine from her like actual light, whose presence reminded him of someone he had loved and lost, someone he had failed to protect, someone who still waited in imprisonment for a crime she had not committed. Your Majesty, Parazad said, bowing respectfully, welcome to our home. Please, come and rest. Listen to the singing tree, watch the golden water. And if you have questions, any questions at all, the speaking bird knows all truths and will answer anything you ask. The Sultan entered the courtyard as though walking in a dream. He heard the singing tree's melodies and felt them work on his heart like gentle hands kneading bread, softening what had been hard, warming what had been cold. He saw the golden water fountain and felt something in his chest ease, some tight knot of pain beginning to loosen. And then he heard the speaking bird, which looked at him with eyes that seemed to see everything, past and present and future, public face and private heart, sultan and man. You have questions, the bird said. It was not a question but a statement. Ask them. The Sultan felt his hands trembling. He had many questions, questions he had carried for 20 years, questions that woke him in the night, questions that had no good answers. But the question that came out was simple. These young people, who are they? The speaking bird ruffled its feathers, and the sound was like wind through trees, like pages turning, like doors opening. Would you like to know the truth, O Sultan? The full truth, the complete truth, the truth that has been hidden from you for 2 decades by jealousy and lies? I would, the Sultan said, and his voice was barely a whisper, because somewhere deep inside, he already knew. He already knew, had perhaps always known, that something terrible had been done, some great wrong committed, some precious thing stolen. And so the speaking bird, who knew all truths and could tell them in ways that opened understanding rather than breaking hearts, told the story. It told of three sisters and their wishes under moonlight. It told of a sultan who heard those wishes and chose the youngest sister, the one with the purest heart. It told of a marriage and a promise, 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, who would bring joy beyond measure. It told of jealous sisters who stole 3 babies and set them floating on the canal, who brought puppies instead and lied about curses and magic. It told of an old gardener finding a basket, of 3 children raised in love if not in luxury, of a sultana imprisoned for crimes that existed only in her sister's poisonous imaginations. Sultan listened to all of this, and the color drained from his face, then flooded back in a rush of red, then drained again. His hands gripped the edge of the fountain basin, as though it were the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become unsteady, uncertain, revealed as a lie he had been living for 20 years. These 3, the speaking bird said gently, Bahman and Perviz and Parizadeh, they are your children, O Sultan, the children your wife promised you under moonlight, the children she delivered as she said she would. They are your sons and your daughter, stolen from you, hidden from you, but never lost. Not truly lost. Destiny brought them back. The Sultan looked at the 3 young people standing before him, his children, and saw himself in their faces, saw his beloved wife in their eyes and grace and bearing. He saw 20 years of fatherhood stolen, 20 years of their childhood missed, 20 years of an innocent woman, suffering for a crime she never committed, and he wept. The Sultan wept there in the gardener's courtyard, wept with grief for what had been stolen, and with joy for what had been returned, wept with rage at the betrayal, and with gratitude for the truth finally revealed. Bahman and Perviz and Parizadeh stood frozen, their own faces shocked pale, their minds struggling to reconcile what they had just learned. They were not the children of a gardener, however much they loved Karim and his wife. They were children of the Sultan, children of a sultana they had never known, royalty by birth if not by upbringing. "Where is she?" the Sultan finally asked, his voice rough with tears. "Where is the sultana, my wife, their mother?" "In a small room at the gate of your own palace," the speaking bird said softly, "where she has waited for 20 years, faithful and patient, never losing hope that truth would eventually shine forth, that love would eventually triumph, that what was broken would eventually be mended." The Sultan rose to his feet with sudden decision. "Come," he said to Bahman and Perviz and Parizadeh. "Come with me now. We have been separated long enough. We have lived in lies long enough. It is time for truth, for justice, for reunion." And so they went, the Sultan and his 3 children, accompanied by Karim and his wife, who were also weeping now with complicated emotions, with joy for the children's fortune and sorrow for their own coming loss, with gratitude for having been chosen to raise such extraordinary souls, and grief that the raising was over. The procession returned to the palace, and words spread before them like wind across water. By the time the Sultan reached the small room where the Sultana had lived her imprisonment, crowds lined the streets, people pressed against walls and hung from windows, everyone wanting to witness this moment of revelation and restoration. The Sultan himself opened the door to his wife's prison, a door he had never opened before, a door he had tried to forget existed, a door that represented his greatest failure as a husband and a man. Inside, in a simple room with a single window, a woman sat weaving. She was older now than when he had last truly seen her. 20 years will add lines and silver to anyone. But she was still beautiful, still graceful, still carrying herself with the dignity of someone who knows her own innocence even when the world believes her guilty. She looked up when the door opened, and her eyes met the Sultan's eyes, and something passed between them that was beyond words: recognition and forgiveness, pain and healing, love that had survived 20 years of separation and injustice. "My beloved," the Sultan said, his voice breaking, "I have been a fool. I have been wrong. I have been blind and deaf to truth. But our children, Our children have brought me truth, have opened my eyes, have brought you justice and freedom." He stepped aside, and Bahman and Perviz and Parizad entered the small room, three young people grown strong and beautiful, wise and kind, exactly as their mother had promised they would be. The Sultana looked at them, and her hand rose to her mouth, and she made a sound that was half sob and half laugh, half grief and half joy, the sound of a mother's heart recognizing what it had been missing for 20 years, the sound of completeness after too long feeling broken. "My children," she whispered. "My children." And they came to her, these children who had never known her, who had been raised by others, who had no memory of her voice or her touch, and somehow they knew her anyway. Somehow, the body remembers what the mind forgets. Somehow, love recognizes itself even across decades and distance. They embraced there in that small room that had been a prison and now became a palace, became the center of the universe, became the place where what had been broken was finally made whole. What happened to the jealous sisters, you might ask? The speaking bird had told their part in the crime, had revealed their jealousy and lies, their theft of babies and substitution of puppies, their 20 years of maintaining a terrible falsehood. Justice could have been harsh. Justice could have been terrible. The Sultan's rage, when he learned what they had done, was like a storm that could have destroyed anything in its path. But the Sultana, wise and kind even after 20 years of unjust imprisonment, pleaded for mercy. "They have lived with their guilt and their lies for 20 years, she said. "They have had to maintain their deception, to remember what they said, to fear discovery every day. They have made prisons for themselves more terrible than any room with locked doors. Let them live with what they have done. Let them see us happy, reunited, whole. Let our joy be their punishment, and our forgiveness their burden." And so it was. The sisters were banished from the palace, from the positions they had gained through treachery, from the presence of the family they had tried to destroy. They lived out their days in exile, watching from a distance as the Sultan and Sultana ruled with wisdom, as Bahman and Perviz and Parizadeh grew into their roles as royal children, as the kingdom flourished under leadership grounded in love and truth. The speaking bird, the singing tree, and the golden water fountain were brought to the palace, where they were installed in the most beautiful courtyard, where anyone could come and see them, hear them, be blessed by them. The singing tree grew larger and more magnificent, its melodies spreading across the city at dawn and dusk. The golden water fountain became a place of pilgrimage, where people came to make wishes and receive blessings. And the speaking bird became the Sultan's most trusted advisor, for it knew all truths and could answer any question, and it helped the Sultan govern with wisdom and justice. Karim and his wife were brought to the palace too, given rooms and honors, for they had raised the royal children with love and kindness, had given them everything that truly matters: ethics and education, compassion and courage. The Sultan called them grandfather and grandmother, and saw to it that their final years were lived in comfort and respect. And Bahman and Perviz and Parizadeh? They grew into their roles as prince and princes and princess, but they never forgot their years in the gardener's cottage, never forgot the lessons they learned from Karim about patience and tending, and the quiet satisfaction of making things grow. Bahman became a great warrior and a greater peacemaker. Perviz became a scholar and a poet, a keeper of wisdom and beauty. And Parizadeh became her father's co-ruler, beloved by the people, renowned for her fairness and her insight, her ability to see truth even when it was hidden, her courage to keep climbing even when voices called her to turn back. And they all lived, as the old stories say, as the truest stories promise, happily ever after, in a happiness earned through trials and tests, through courage and cleverness, through love that refused to be defeated by distance or time or even stone. Now, dear listener, our story is complete. The children who were stolen have been restored. The mother who was unjustly punished has been freed. The treasures that were hidden have been found. The truths that were buried have been revealed. But your story, gentle traveler, is just beginning. Your story of sleep, of rest, of dreams that will carry you through the night on soft wings, on gentle currents, on paths as safe and sure as the path that led Parizade up the mountain and back down again, transformed and triumphant. Let yourself feel the weight of your body now, how heavy and comfortable it has become as the story unfolded. Let yourself notice your breathing, how slow and deep it is, how each exhale carries away a little more tension, a little more wakefulness, a little more of the day's demands and duties. The speaking bird would tell you, if it were here, that you are worthy of rest, that you have climbed your own mountains today, that you have faced your own tests, and that you deserve to lay down your burdens now, to close your eyes, to let sleep come like a loving mother, like a patient father, like Karim bending over his garden plants with gentleness and care. The singing tree would play you a lullaby if it were here, a melody made of moonlight and memory, of comfort and promise, of all the ways that what seems broken can be mended, that what seems lost can be found, that what seems impossible can be achieved by those brave enough to keep climbing, to keep trying, to keep believing. The golden water would bless you if it were here, would flow over you like liquid light, washing away worries, rinsing away regrets, leaving behind only peace, only calm, only the deep knowing that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, becoming exactly who you are meant to be. Feel your eyelids growing heavier now, if they aren't already closed. Feel how much effort it takes to keep them open, how much easier it would be to simply let them fall, to let the darkness behind them become complete, to let the gentle dark welcome you into its soft embrace. Your breathing is so slow now, so steady, each breath a wave rolling in and rolling out, in and out, carrying you deeper into relaxation, deeper into rest, deeper into the place where sleep lives and dreams are born. If thoughts arise, and they may, for thoughts are like birds, they come and go as they please, simply notice them without following them. Let them pass like clouds across the sky, like leaves floating on a stream, like the voices on Parizade's mountain that she heard without heeding, that she acknowledged without believing. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are exactly where you belong, and sleep is here now, all around you, closer than your heartbeat, gentler than your breathing, patient as stone, faithful as love. Let your body sink deeper into whatever surface holds you, as though you were becoming part of it, as though you were a stone sinking slowly through water, down and down, toward a bottom soft as silk, as welcoming as a mother's arms, as peaceful as the garden where the singing tree grows, and the golden water flows, and the speaking bird knows all truths, including this one. You are loved. You are worthy. You are enough. And now, as our story ends and your sleep begins, let me whisper one final blessing. May your night be peaceful as a moonlit garden. May your sleep be deep as the roots of ancient trees. May your dreams be sweet as the singing tree's melodies, as bright as the golden water's fountain, as true as the speaking bird's wisdom. May you wake refreshed and restored. May you carry the lessons of our story into your waking life, the courage to keep climbing, the wisdom to hear without heeding what is false, the love that transforms and restores, the faith that what is lost can be found, that what is broken can be mended, that what seems impossible is simply waiting for the right person, the right moment, the right combination of courage and wisdom and love. But for now, just for now, for this moment and this night, there is nothing to do but rest. Nothing to solve, nothing to fix, nothing to prove. Only this, breathing in, breathing out, sinking deeper, letting go, surrendering to sleep's sweet gravity, falling softly into dreams. The speaking bird settles its wings. The singing tree softens, its melodies to a whisper, to a hum, to a vibration felt more than heard. The golden water fountain slows its flow, becomes gentler, becomes almost still, reflecting stars that are coming out now in the velvet sky. And you, dear listener, you are drifting now, floating between waking and sleeping, between story and dream, between the world of words and the world of rest. Let yourself drift. Let yourself float. Let yourself fall. The story is complete. The night is gentle. The dreams are waiting. And sleep is here. Sleep. Sleep. Rest now, gentle traveler. Sleep well. Dream beautifully. And may you wake to a morning as golden as the water, as melodious as the tree, as true as the bird's voice. But for now, simply sleep.